I'm here with Chad Riefling from Consumer Credit Service of Rochester, New York. He is a VISTA site for one of our Rochester Youth Year personnel, and he's here to talk about his VISTA experience, as well as starting out with what is consumer credit counseling.
Great. Well, thank you, Leslie. It's really great to talk to you about this. First, I will say that we love Rochester Youth Year and the AmeriCorps VISTA program. We've benefited from it for a number of years now. So really excited to talk about our experiences and hopefully give people an idea as to, what benefit they can take away from the program and how it can help their organization as well. But at Consumer Credit Counseling Service of Rochester, we're a local nonprofit financial counseling and education organization that has been here in the community since 1970. And our mission is to help people to build financial wellness and financial peace of mind. And we achieve that through kind of two main service tracks. Number one is through our financial counseling that we provide free of charge to anyone who identifies a need to improve their financial condition. And then through different financial education programs like our youth financial education program and several others that we offer in order to reach a certain audience or to address a certain need within the community.
So how did you learn about AmeriCorps VISTA and Rochester Youth Year initially?
So my knowledge of the program goes back actually to the first year. I was working with, and I still do work with, a local program through the city of Rochester called Biz Kids. And that's a program that is offered through the Recreation Department that helps young students between the ages of 13 to 18 to understand business concepts, understand how to be an entrepreneur, how to develop an entrepreneurial mindset, and how to develop their own business. And the director of that program at the time was looking for different ways that they could expand, how they could sustain the program. And they actually got one of the very first Rochester Youth Year. They were fellows at the time, I think. And ever since then, they got a few more members to serve on the program. So I always had knowledge of VISTA and Rochester Youth Year from that experience. And I kind of co-supervised, I guess was the term at the time, one of the members who actually ended up going on to work for the city of Rochester and has been there since that time. It's just done a phenomenal job. So once we started to explore a few more opportunities here at Consumer Credit Counseling, I thought this would be a great way for us to start to expand what we were trying to do in that particular area and also kind of capitalize on some of the opportunities that were in front of us.
So since you've had about how many years has it been that you've been working with VISTAs in Rochester Youth Year?
So going back with the Biz Kids program, that would have been in like 2008. And as Consumer Credit Counseling Service, where we've had our own members, we started in 2016. And I believe our current member is like our 7th, and our next member will be our 8th with the various different projects that we've had. And we've had, the 3-member maximum on multiple projects.
So can you talk about some of the projects you've had?
Yeah, so the first one, interestingly enough, it strikes a pretty interesting contrast to the current project. So the first one was very conceptual and exploratory in trying to understand how we can create some programming that would make a bigger impact when it came to youth financial education and to do it in a meaningful and sustainable way. So that initiative really went from just a concept where you had to do research and development and a lot of real theoretical type stuff in a sense, all the way to that program actually is probably a really cool success story for Rochester Youth Year and VISTA, where now it's fully funded and we have a staff member who runs that program. That program is now known as Go for Gold. And what we do is train youth between the ages of 13 to 18 to be peer educators and to talk about financially related topics in their schools. When they conduct a presentation successfully, they get a $50 stipend. for doing that work. So not only are the youth learning and adopting these very important concepts for their lives, but they're also becoming the leaders in that subject matter. And they're also getting a real life opportunity to have that teachable moment be something tangible. So we also then encourage them to set up a bank account, to save part of that money, and to employ the concepts that they learned and that they're teaching as well. So that's what 3 VISTA members helped us to be able to develop, which blew my mind. And I was just so excited that it ended up working out the way that it did. The current project that we're working on right now is our coach program. And the difference there is that's actually a program that was already developed that we started back in 2005. And over the years, it's gone through many different forms and shapes. And with roles changing, with our capacity changing, we had to really rethink how we were going to be able to continue to conduct that program and to make it sustainable. And within that program, we train volunteers who will act as a coach, like a financial mentor, to low-income individuals who are working on specific financial goals, and they meet one-on-one over a 9-month period to work together on those financial goals and to provide that level of support. So what we've been looking at with that particular program is, again, how do we get it to the point where it's going to be something we can sustain the operations of? How do we streamline the operations? How do we modernize a lot of the program components to make it a little bit more accessible to people on an ongoing basis? And how are we going to make the operations of that program something that we can do without a full-time staff member?
So what is the current VISTA doing within this program, and what are your plans for the next VISTA?
So the current VISTA has done a lot of the work of streamlining our program design and automating many of the processes that we had established. And then next year is VISTA, which will be our 3rd on that project. So they'll be the final VISTA member for that project. They will really focus on the sustainability piece. How do we actually now create some sort of process internally that's going to allow us to either capitalize on other staff members who can help to run the program versus just one staff member like myself trying to run it part-time, which I can't do anymore because my role has changed so much over the years. Or how do we also maybe pursue funding to staff that program with a dedicated staff member and then expand how many people we can serve through the program? That's always a greater challenge, but those are kind of the 2 things that we'll be trying to focus on achieving when it comes to the sustainability of the program in the final year.
Have you thought about what your next project might be?
Not yet, but we do have plenty of them. So we'll certainly be going back to the drawing board and figuring out like which project that we have, in the mix really would be best suited for a VISTA member.
So what do the VISTA's days look like generally during this time that they're working with you?
They can vary quite a bit. I think the greatest challenge for a lot of the VISTA members who have served here is that the work has to be self-driven to a certain extent. And it's a type of work where you're really creating the work and you're having to think ahead and understand like what else needs to be taken care of, what direction does this need to go in. And that's probably what's so different for many VISTA members, because maybe they're coming right out of college and the only type of work that they've really experienced so far is where somebody just says, go do these tasks and come back and tell me when they're done. Versus when it's project-based and it's program design-based, there aren't a set number of tasks that you need to accomplish. There certainly will be at times. So a lot of their days are addressing certain responsibilities that they need to take care of, and they're doing a lot of research, a lot of communication. They are doing a lot of documentation, sometimes some grant writing, and also networking. I think that's probably one of the biggest benefits that a member can get out of their experience is building deeper roots within the community network. And from there, taking on another opportunity after their year of service is complete.
So given what we've talked about, what would you say to someone who's looking to serve and thinking about your site as a potential place to serve?
Well, I'm a little bit biased towards my site, of course. The challenge that we've had with our site is that financial counseling and education doesn't sound as heartwarming as, you know, a lot of other opportunities that are out there. But once a lot of members have kind of gotten into the work and they've sat in on some of the counseling sessions, they've done some of the educational programs that we offer, and they understand how closely this interrelates to the fabric of somebody's day-to-day life, where they have to deal with the stress of managing their finances or dealing with debt that's looming, or understanding how they're actually going to get to that point where they can establish their credit and buy a home and reach those dreams that they had. Then they're like, oh, wait a minute, I really understand just how crucial this type of work is to those things that are important to all of us, even though it's financial services and, you know, it seems a little less personal. But really at the core of what we do is probably the most personal thing that you can deal with, which is how we handle our money on a day-to-day basis. So to a member coming in here, I would say, you know, take the time to look a little bit deeper and understand how this type of work really impacts the fabric of somebody's socioeconomic well-being and empowers them for a lifetime to be able to take charge of those things that they really want to take charge of, and understand how rewarding that can be, as well as a lot of the other work that's available out there. And then I would say that I think we have a really great working environment here where we're incredibly passionate and serious and thoughtful and mindful about the work that we do. And a lot of that is quite formalized. We do, you know, a lot of data tracking and a lot of number crunching and things like that, again, being in financial services, but our interactions with each other are very informal. And I'm somebody who certainly appreciates that, where you're a person as well as an employee. And we do see the value in enjoying each other's company. We see the value in being able to connect and support each other as a team. We're very much a team-based organization. So those are the things that I think would be very important for an incoming VISTA member to understand about being here at Consumer Credit Counseling Service. As a member in general, I think that VISTAs are going to go through an arc where they're going to be really excited at first, and they're going to hit that point where they're like, okay, this just got real. And they're going to have a little bit of a decline and be like, oh my gosh, there's so many more things that I have to deal with that I did not expect, you know, such as, you know, receiving a stipend that's less than minimum wage, and how do you live off of that? And how do you access the resources that so many other people have to access and navigate? And you learn the challenges of navigating the acquisition of those resources. And then over time, I think you see the impact of your work. You don't see it at first, and that can be a little bit frustrating. And lastly, I would say that that year goes by so fast. As I said, we've had 6 or 7 members, and it feels like it was just last year that we had our first member. Time just flies by as you're doing this work, because it can be so intense and you put so much of yourself into it that you don't realize how much is actually going on.
So just to give a larger context, this is being recorded in June 2020, and the COVID pandemic is still going on. Thankfully, it's not as bad as it was earlier, but how has this changed this service year, and how might it affect the next VISTA?
So it affected this year's program pretty severely. For one, the coach program model was really structured around in-person group meetings. Well, immediately we couldn't do those anymore. Thankfully, part of what we were aiming to accomplish within this past year was to offer the opportunity to participate in our meetings virtually, because as you can imagine, a lot of our participants have tremendous barriers just in having to arrange daycare for their children or transportation, etc. And for a number of years, we were thinking about how can we create other opportunities. If somebody hits one of those barriers, we don't want them to feel like they can't participate in the program. It's just kind of silly if they can jump on a Zoom call and still see what's happening in the meeting and then still connect with their coach on that same Zoom call or on the phone. So we were just forced to have to do that. And thankfully, the way that it worked out, we only had to do it for the last 2 or 3 group meetings that we had for the whole program. So the cohort in the program was pretty well established, and I think they were a little bit more open and comfortable in just trying something like that out. So it forced us to pivot very fast, but at the same time incorporate something that we needed to incorporate anyway. Secondly, I think it became challenging in the sense that we all had to work apart from each other and work virtually. And now our VISTA member who would be here in the office experiencing the energy of the staff and had that ability to just pop in an office and ask a quick question or get some quick support didn't have that anymore. So we had to really think about how are we going to organize our individual days to be able to connect with each other? How are we going to open up just general opportunities for communication if, you know, an email wasn't good enough or you really just needed to talk about something? You know, what was the pace of that going to be like? What was the procedure of that going to look like? So we had to adjust, you know, in those ways, as many other people did, and we're still working on it. I think the establishment of more touch point meetings that we scheduled was very helpful. So that way we both knew we were going to have that meaningful time and we could rely upon it if we needed to.
Is there anything else I haven't touched on that you really want to get out there?
That's a really good question. I think the biggest thing that I would say to members is that even though they might feel like their work isn't making as much of an impact as they would like it to, it is. And that will definitely show at the end, and because of the fact that the work that they do is going to be carried on. And that's one of the most important things for an organization to take away from a program like VISTA, is that the members are building something that's going to kind of outlive their time of service, which is of tremendous value. And then secondly, I would say that for VISTA members, they should know that they should always speak up and not feel as though their idea, their voice, their thoughts about anything that the organization that they're serving at is addressing is not of value, because it is. And so that was one thing that I think I had to learn to encourage our VISTA members to do, because I just assumed that they would do it automatically. And over time I learned that they were kind of a little apprehensive, feeling like they didn't have the right to add their thoughts and to add their own ideas and their voice to whatever it was that we were talking about. And I said, no, that's why you're here. You know, you have a lot to offer. So I would say the same for any other member that's going to serve.
Thank you for your time. I'm going to conclude this interview and the recording. It's really been a pleasure, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I did as well. Thank you again.